Good evening. I got my Tustin Tiller hat on tonight. TT. That's right, man. Tustin Tiller. Wow. That was a while ago. My brother gave me this hat. I guess he went to a reunion or something like that. I think the school was celebrating like their 100th anniversary or something like that. And he got me a hat and he got me a t-shirt. So I got my TT hat on tonight. Yeah. So what's going on? Anything happening in the world these days? It's worthy of speaking about? I was watching the replay of Sean O'Brien's speech last night, the guy who's the president of the Teamsters Union. He spoke at the Republican National Convention. I was like shocked. You should watch this speech. It's absolutely stunning. It's one of the best speeches I have ever seen at a convention. Man, he's like watching a good preacher. He's Irish, man. And I mean, he went on, I think his speech was like about 17 minutes or so. And I was mesmerized by the guy. And the stuff that he's saying was like, you kidding me? They're letting this guy speak to this Republican convention, and he's up there bashing the corporations. He's saying there's something wrong in America and telling, about all this income inequity and how people are struggling and they don't have health care and the unions have been decimated. And these people in the crowd are like looking at each other like, who authorized this guy to speak here? He sounds like a darn socialist. And I mean, he went on without a break. I don't know if he had a teleprompter or not, but man, what a great speaker he was. And I was just, like I say, I was shocked because I'm figuring there's just going to be a bunch of sycophants there at that convention. And Trump was standing there watching him, and J.D. Vance was standing there watching him. And I'm just wondering about what's going on in the wheels in their head, man. So anyhow, him and the guy who is the president of the auto workers, his name is Sean too, I think. I forget what his last name is. He's terrific. And I thought, man, would they ever make a ticket together? They would whoop anybody. So I guess I'm dreaming again. Anyhow, I was thinking about, I don't know why, but I was thinking about one of my favorite movies of all time, a movie by the name of Network. I think it was made in the 70s. William Holden was in it. Faye Dunaway was in it. The guy, I can't remember his first name. Finch was his last name. He was given the Academy Award posthumously. He died not too long after the film was finished. And he was absolutely wonderful. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, you may have heard some parts about it before. Anyways, I'll give you the basic outline of it because it kind of ties into what I want to talk about tonight. It's a story of this newscaster by the name of Howard Beale. And he's got a television show, and he sort of reminds me of a Rush Limbaugh type of a person. He's got a live audience, and so he's all upset about the way things are going, the government, corporations and stuff like that. And so he says, man, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. He looks at the camera, he says, I want you to go to your windows. You people I'm watching on television, I want you to go to your windows. I want you to open your windows, and I want you to shout out into the night, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. And so all over America, windows are opened, and you can go out in the street, and you can hear people shouting this. Well, when he does this, the ratings of his TV show just absolutely skyrocket. And he becomes like the number one show on television. Well, Howard is a bit of a nutcase, okay? So he takes it a little bit too far, but he didn't know it because he's crazy. So he is called into the conference room one day by the president of the network, played by Ned Beatty. And Ned Beatty, wow, he proceeds to rip Howard Beale up one side and down the other and explain to Howard how things work in this world, how the corporations run things, how the media runs things. And you're going to be changing your tune. You're attacking that. And so not too long after that, Howard's got to chill. I won't tell you the rest of the movie because I don't want to ruin it for you, but just thinking that that is kind of, in a way, what's going on right now, because there's so much, hostility, anxiety, tension, stress going on in our country because of the events of the last couple of weeks. We had a couple of black swans. I don't know if you've ever heard that expression before, but for those of you who haven't, a black swan is an unusual occurrence, something you don't expect. And we had two of them, which number one, of course, was the meltdown by Biden at the quote-unquote debate. And then the second one was the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. And I mean, this was all crammed into like a 2-week period or so, something like that. So it's just amazing how one story is gigantic and you think, man, nothing could get crazier than that. And then a few weeks later, you have even more crazy. So after the debate, the movement to remove Biden got stronger and it was building. And then this assassination attempt just put the kibosh on it. Everybody just slowed down, backed off for a bit. But I'm getting the sense that it's starting to percolate back up a little bit more. The intensity of the assassination attempt has kind of worn off, because the information about it got out really quick. The details of, who the shooter was. And it turns out he was a registered Republican. And I guess his first opportunity to vote, he voted for Republicans. And supposedly, the home that he lived in there with his parents, there were Trump signs in the yard. They weren't there when the reporters showed up, but the neighbors have testified that, yeah, they had Trump signs, they were Trumpsters. So that story is losing a little bit of its velocity, and we're starting to look at Biden again because there is time left for a decision on that. And I think one of the things that's going to happen is that I think they're obligated the first of the month to report the donations that were given to the campaign for the previous month. And since that debate was on the 27th of June, and the report of the income for the month of June was delivered around the first part of July, there were only 3 days left in that month for people to stop sending money. So you really wouldn't see it. You wouldn't see the effects of that debate. But now we've had the whole month of, well, not yet, but we're going to have the month of July. Today is, I think, the 16th. So it's going to take a couple more weeks before we see those numbers. And if those numbers are bad, plus there were some polls released today, I think US Gov polls or something like that, that were really bad for Biden. Really bad. Trump's beating him in all the swing states by a large margin. And what's really strange is that in states where you have a Democrat who's running for governor or Senate or a House, they're doing really well. They're doing fine. They're way ahead. And Biden is way behind. So he said, bring me some data. So hopefully what'll happen is he will come to the realization. Yesterday I was pretty pessimistic about it, but I think there is enough time left to make a change. And if there's enough data and information, hopefully he'll step aside, and then we can request the job interview forms that I spoke about the other night that we need to have sent in, excuse me, with a check, not a check, maybe a money order or a bank check in the amount of $10,000, along with your resume and a page explaining why you want to be president of the United States. So we can have a look at that and get some real valid energetic contestants to have a chance against this guy, because we get a good person. He's very beatable. I mean, he's not popular. It's just that he's running against the weakest candidate. If we had a real candidate, we'd crush him. That's all. So, yeah, I think that's a real good possibility to happen. What else is going on? I'm trying to think. I don't know why I was thinking about cats today. I've got 2 dogs and 1 cat. The cat that we have is Shadow. We've had Shadow for, that's probably about 7 years or so. And we'd like to have about 3 cats hanging around, because we're out in the country and we got mice, rats, stuff like that, and the cats keep them down. We've been down to 1 cat for probably at least 6 months or so. And I was thinking about this last batch of cats that we had. We had one that was a Russian blue, and then one was a, I think it was, that wasn't a calico. It looked like a little lynx or a little bobcat. Had those little pointy ears. And I'm telling you, that cat was just a marvelous little cat. I named him Sparky. And we got him when he was probably about 8 weeks old. And he came in there, and we got these 2 big dogs. I had no fear of the dogs at all. And he'd jump up where the food dish was, and he'd get right in the food dish. And the other cats are like standing back, getting out of the way. Man, he'd get in there, he'd stand in the food dish and eat. And he was just absolutely just the most beautiful cat, and friendly, and come over and jump up on my lap, you know. And then he disappeared. Had him about 6 months, and he disappeared. And before him, we had several cats. We had 1 cat that my daughter had given us when she had separated from her previous husband and couldn't keep the cat where she was. His name was Joey. He was a long-haired Russian blue, and he was just absolutely marvelous cat. Had him for years over in Yucca Valley. And when I think it was Skylar, when I got my German Shepherd, Skylar, Joey didn't like that. And so he disappeared and went over, and the neighbor's house was abandoned. They had a big barn over there. So he went over there and lived in that barn by himself. I don't know how he foraged or where he got water from, but I'd call him and he'd come running over the house. Like you call a dog. This cat would come running over, and I'd get him inside and I'd give him some cheese or some cottage cheese and pet him for a while. And just marvelous cat. He's a 1-person cat. He was my cat, previously my daughter's cat. And I wouldn't see him for a month, sometimes like 2 months. And I'd start thinking about him, and all of a sudden he'd show up. I'd be driving, leaving the house, getting in the car, driving down the road, and all of a sudden he'd show up. Like he knew that I was wondering about him. Amazing little cat. I miss Joey. He was a sweet cat. So the other thing I was thinking about is I have friends who are MAGA, and this one particular friend I'm thinking about, I've known him about, got to be 40 years. He and I did a lot of work together. Good guy. He's one of my students in the martial arts. Matter of fact, the only student I ever had that made it to black belt. Good guy. So, but he's MAGA, and there's no talking him out of it. Just like there's no talking me, and I'm not a Biden. I'm not in the Biden cult. I'm an independent, registered independent. I'm for a person who represents my ideas. Medicare for everybody, child care, do something about this income inequity, do something about this homeless problem. I think it's crazy that you think you're going to deport 15 million people. I agree, we have a problem at the border. We got to resolve that. I've got no problem with building a wall. None at all. I think it's ridiculous to say Mexico is going to pay for it. We're quite capable of paying for our own wall. That make you feel better that we get a wall? Fine. We can have a wall. Got no problem with that. So we still need a lot of workers in this country that will do these menial jobs. So if Trump gets in there, yeah, that's probably his number one big deal. He's going to deport 15 million people. Never gives us an explanation of how he's going to do that, who's going to pay for it, who's going to take them, etc. So he knows very well that that's not going to happen. But he'll make some excuse when he's in there. Why, yeah, we're working on it, and it's a big job, and it's going to take time. We're building these camps, relocation camps, and figuring out a way to do this and that. And there'll be some symbolic things that he'll do. Like, yeah, we look at these buses, man. We got each of those buses that got 50 people on them, and there's 10 of those buses, so that's 500 people we're sending out today. So that sort of a thing is what he's going to try to pull. But anyways, I was thinking about my friend who's MAGA and the fact that, I've talked to him about this, and, he sends me these YouTube things and wants me to listen to this person on the radio, da-da-da, all this stuff. And that's really bizarre. Like, he's going to listen to David Pakman, sit down and read a book or something like that. So I thought, okay, how can I resolve this? And then I started thinking about divorce. How does that work? Now, I've been married for 56 years. And I've had a few rough spots in my marriage and contemplated divorce for a short period of time. But when this was going on, I had no money. There's no way I could afford to have my own place and support a home with a couple of kids and an ex-wife and pay alimony and all that stuff. There's no way I could do that. Plus, there was no way I was going to be away from my kids. So it just wasn't practical. And that was a good thing because I stayed with my wife and things worked out. So that was good. But I want to run an idea by you because, like I say, I've been thinking about this, how this could work. Let's say that you knew somebody that's fallen in love with somebody, and this person is going to marry this other person. We'll use an example of this is a woman that you know, and she's telling you about this guy, and you know this guy, and she wants you to meet this guy. So you meet this guy, and you assess him, and you think to yourself, yeah, I don't know, this doesn't look so good. I'm not so sure about this. So, you want to share those thoughts with that young lady and tell her what you think? Well, okay, let's say that you do. And she says to you, well, look, I'm in love with him. You don't understand. We're in love with each other. Good person. You don't know who he is. I know better than you do. So therefore, I'm going to marry him. Okay, well, I know if I really harp on this and tell her that she's making a big mistake, all that's going to do is drive her away from me. So I got to let go, and I got to think to myself, okay, if you're right, Packard, if you're right about this guy, eventually she's going to find out. And if she can't tolerate it, that'll be the end of it. Okay? So I think it's the same thing with MAGA. Something has to happen. And in divorce, a lot of times it's a slow process where it's a culmination of things that have happened that lead to the divorce. And then sometimes there's just an event like, hey man, I caught my husband in bed with my best friend. Okay? So it could be the same way with Trump and MAGA. Something could happen, but it has to happen directly to the person, to the MAGA person, in order for them to divorce themselves from Trump. In other words, they can't blame it on some other thing. So the best thing in the world is not you trying to convince them that they're making a big mistake. The best thing is for them to come to that realization that they've made a mistake. And this might take some time. Things might have to get really bad. Like, let's say all of these illegals get deported and there's nobody to pick our food. There's nobody to make our burritos, nobody to make our cup of coffee in the morning. And if there is, they're a citizen of the United States who's living here, they're not going to work for $20 an hour. They're going to have a substantial pay raise over what the illegal person was making. And that's going to increase the cost of whatever it is that you're buying. So this is the way that it's going to have to come down, is they're going to have to come to the realization themselves. And the more you try to convince them what an amoral person, what a horrible person, what a dangerous person Donald Trump is, the harder their heart is going to get. Just like the Pharaoh in Egypt. Remember all the bad doo-doo that God brought down on the Pharaoh? And what happened? His heart just got harder and harder and harder. And so eventually, Moses just got everybody together. About 3 million people. And they headed east out of what we now call Egypt, across Sinai Desert, excuse me, to the Promised Land, which was about 200 miles away. And to be able to walk about 200 miles, if you're healthy, probably do it comfortably in a couple weeks. But it took them 40 years. And there were people that were already living there up in the hills looking down on them down there. We're talking about 3 million people, right? Wandering around down there. They must have gone down there and said, hey, what are you guys doing? We've been watching you and you're just like basically walking around in circles. Well, we're looking for the Promised Land. Moses is leading us to the Promised Land. Okay, whatever, dude. So that's my take on that. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed the talk this evening. It's a beautiful night and it's starting to get dark. I still have good light on me. So I'll get back home and get this thing loaded up to the internet. So hopefully we'll have some more news for you tomorrow. And appreciate your comments in the comment section. Let me know what you think about my hat. All right? Good night.